It's your boy Luke back for our value picks for this week's RSM Classic. What we're going to do is we'll give you guys all the people you need to save some salary in your lineups. They're all going to be $7,500 and below. And not only do these guys have some safety for your lineups, they should go out and make a cut. They're also going to have some top end upside for this large field GPP contest. And as always, we'll be taking a look at a player's recent form metrics, their course fit metrics, in order to find a blend between the guys that are playing well, but also fit this golf course to a T as well. So without further delay, let's hop right into it with our first value pick for this week. At $6,300, our first value pick doesn't look the best on the surface, at least with a cursory glance at his advanced metrics, but a little bit of a deeper dive into his game shows that JT Poston is in fact a great course fit here for Sea Island. So first and foremost, we know he does his best work on short Bermuda grass tracks, which is exactly the kind of venue we get this week. He lacks distance off the tee, and with both courses in play this week, measuring just over 7,000 yards, that's not really going to be a huge issue. And talking about Bermuda grass, he's a Bermuda grass specialist, especially when it comes to on the greens. He gains an additional 0.11 shots gained putting on Bermuda grass, and that's compared to his already excellent baseline. He's one of the best putters on tour. Doesn't really matter what surface you have him on, but you put him on Bermuda grass, he gets even better. He's also found success in the past during windy conditions. We've seen that at the Barbasol. We've also seen that at the Bermuda Championship, a few other coastal courses as well, where he's been able to get it under par when the rest of the field hasn't been able to. So perhaps it's because he grew up in some of those tropical conditions down south. He's mentioned that in some of his pressers in the past. A few comp courses we have for this course, he's also had some success at, most notably the Wyndham Championship, Corrales Punta Cana Championship, the Shriners, Puerto Rico Open, RBC Heritage, and Sanderson Farms. All of those are short tracks where he's had at least a top 10, which are great comp courses for this week. If we take a look at the recent form, he has 7 missed cuts in a row. This is a pure upside play. It's almost completely a course fit angle, but when he has his game, this is somebody who's not only going to go out and make a cut, this is somebody who's going to thread the top of the leaderboard. He has a win to his name, 3 second place finishes, 3 more top 5s as well in his short PGA Tour careers. And that's something that not many other people in this price range can really talk home about. He unfortunately has this extremely volatile game, but in large field GPP contests where we're trying to take down $200,000 entries, $50,000 entries, that kind of thing. That's exactly the kind of upside you're looking for. A lot of people aren't going to be willing to take a risk on some of these players, and sure, they're going to miss more cuts than they're going to make, but when they make the cuts, they're really going to pay it off. I mean, there's other players out there in the field, Matt Kuchar per se, where they're going to go out and make a lot more cuts than somebody like a JT Poston, but when he makes the cut, it's usually a 25th finish, a 30th place or something like that, and that really doesn't mean anything in a large field GPP. You'd be better off taking somebody that missed the cut at that point. So for me, JT Poston has the kind of volatility I'm looking for, and again, a very good course fit. Next up, we have Harry Higgs at $6,900. A little bit more of a well-rounded play here. Brings the course fit to the table, also brings some recent form as well. And just a few weeks ago, Higgs was garnering a ton of attention. I mean, just one of the most likable players on the PGA Tour, so that has a lot to do with it. But was coming in with some good form, had a relatively good course fit, and was nearly 20% owned, again, just 2 or 3 weeks ago. The crazy part is, he's made 7 of his last 8 cuts. He hasn't only had 1 bad performance during that stretch, and I don't really get what's holding people back here. This is also a very good course fit for somebody like a Harry Higgs. Also, arguably, coming in with better form. He's coming in with a longer made straight of cuts, that kind of thing. So he's a shorter hitter. We know that's not going to be a huge issue this week, so just like a JT Poston, should be able to get away with that. He is a stellar approach player, though. He's typically one of the best approach players, regardless of the field that he's in. And the closer you get him to a hole, so wedges, mid irons, that kind of thing, the better he gets as well. Tends to be a little bit worse with his long irons, but we shouldn't be seeing many of those this week at just a 7,000 yard track. And another reason I like him is also the putting splits. So just like a JT Poston, is a little bit better on Bermuda grass. We take a look at his numbers on Bermuda versus his historical baseline. Gains an additional 0.14 shots gained putting per round, which is definitely significant. It's going to be a little bit of a boost this week. But as I mentioned before, in terms of the recent form, coming in making 7 of his last 8 cuts. Nothing to complain about there. He has a top 10 finish at the CJ Cup. He also has a 15th place finish at the Wyndham, and also a 16th place finish at the Northern Trust. So not only is he going out and making cuts, he's putting up respectable scores as well. And the CJ Cup and the Wyndham Championship, I think those are good comp courses as well. Obviously, Wyndham Championship, relatively short golf course, prioritizes some accuracy off of the tee. And the CJ Cup, a course that was relatively long if you take a look at the scorecard yardage, but It's an elevation. He also dealt with some really firm fairways, so played a lot shorter than that. So overall, really like those two as comp courses, and good to see that he's had some success there. And then other than this recent stretch of golf, just over the last 7 or 8 events, he's typically been a little bit hit or miss, which just like a JT Poston is actually attractive. He's definitely going to mix in plenty of missed cuts, but he has a 2nd at the Safeway, a 9th at the Farmers, a 2nd at the Bermuda Championship over these last few years. And all of those were on short tracks. So when he goes out there, he's able to put his game together. It's typically at one of these shorter tracks, which is exactly what we get this week. And while he's still got some inherent risk, he has a lot less risk than somebody like a JT Poston. That's why you see the $600 difference in terms of price. But he's going to give you similar levels of upside. So like both of them for this week, and that's why they both make this list. Next up, we have Troy Merritt at $7,500. Somebody who, again, is a little bit more of a consistent play. You're getting course fit here. You're also getting much better recent form than somebody like a JT Poston. He might have a little bit less upside, though, and we'll get to that here in a second. But he's a sneaky course fit, I'd say. He's got a sneaky run of recent form going as well, which is definitely going to have him overlooked. This is somebody who's going to be sub 5% ownership when it comes down to it tomorrow morning. And he's known for his approach play. He's known for his putting as well, one of the best putters in the world. What else is he known for? Being an atrocious off the tee player. He's not only extremely short off the tee, he's also extremely inaccurate, which is going to be a little bit of a concern for a lot of you out there that run the numbers. A lot of correlation models, not just the ones that I run for my own analysis, but throughout the industry have identified driving accuracy as an extremely important stat this week. And I think it's a little bit misleading, especially the more and more I've looked into it. These kind of models at time, they can give you skewed data. You're looking at numbers for an entire year, whether a guy's been good in terms of driving accuracy over the entire year, not just for a singular week. So what that means is that week to week, you're going to get some of these stats that are skewed out that aren't exactly what you're looking for. So especially here with driving accuracy, I think this is one of those examples, and this should be a little bit of a learning lesson. We're going to go on a little bit of a rant here, but I think it's extremely important. So anytime you have a correlation model and it's spitting out an extremely correlated stat, you have to make sure that it actually makes sense. You have to, put on your thinking cap a little bit, do some of your own analysis, do some, hard critical thinking, that kind of thing, and really discern whether this is a trend that we should be acting on. And here at Sea Island, at both courses, whether it's Plantation or Sea Island, you're dealing with some of the biggest fairways that you'll see all year. They're about an average of 50 yards wide, particularly at the Seaside course. They're extremely wide fairways, and missing them is actually really hard. You had 78% of people hitting fairways last year, which is by far the highest number on the PGA Tour. So it begs the question, why would driving accuracy be important if everybody is hitting fairways? And I've looked into it a little bit more and more. You look at a lot of the past winners here, and a lot of them tend to be accurate drivers of the golf ball. But something that also comes into play is they also tend to be shorter hitters. They also all tend to be good on approach, and they're all good putters. So is it really that they're good at driving accuracy that you're seeing this correlation? Or is it the other skills that come with being an accurate driver of the golf ball that really correlate to success here and really give you that boost? And that's the side that I'm on here. Anytime you have one of these resort style golf courses, you're looking for people that can make a ton of birdies. I mean, we've seen winning scores near 20 under par here at the RSM Classic. So we know there's a lot of birdies out there. We also know that it comes down to approach play, putting yourself in position to score, being hyper aggressive. So I think this is an extremely misleading spot. A lot of people out there are touting driving accuracy is really the stat to look at this week, whereas I think we need to be looking first at scoring ability, making sure that you are a good putter, particularly on Bermuda grass, but also making sure you're good with your approach play. I think a lot of people are kind of discounting that fact. If you're accurate off the tee, guys, you're going to be accurate with your irons. It's a lot harder to be accurate off the tee than it is with your irons. There's a direct correlation between players that are accurate off the tee and that tend to be some of the best approach players in the world. I mean, every player we've talked about to this point in the list has been a top 30 approach player in the world. JT Poston, not so much so this year, but if you take a broader approach, still an above average approach player for his career. But with all that out of the way, what I'm essentially trying to say here is that somebody like Merritt, who might not be extremely accurate off the tee, can still get it done here. He's not really going to have to worry about the off the tee play at all. He's going to be able to lean into that approach play, going to be able to lean into that solid around the green play, that putting that he's so known for. And I think he's a sneaky course fit here. So like I said, just because somebody's atrocious off the tee, I wouldn't really hold it against them here. At these resort style golf courses, it's more about, from fairway in, that's a little bit more important. Let's move on to the recent form though. On the recent form side, it's a little bit more straightforward, not quite as sneaky. He's made 4 of his last 5 cuts. They've all been top 28 finishes as well. So not only is he going out and making cuts, he's making the most of them. And before this recent run of consistency, he's also flashed that top end upside. He had a 2nd place finish at the Rocket Mortgage, a 7th place finish at the Charles Schwab Challenge, also a 7th place finish at the Byron Nelson, and even an 8th place at the Valspar. So somebody who's put up plenty of top 10s this season. We've seen that consistency of late, and I think a lot of people are going to hold that off the tee accuracy against them. Again, it shows up in correlation models, but we always have to ask ourselves why those stats are showing up. I think that's one of the most important parts of doing any type of analysis. And as an engineer, I know this. I mean, obviously, anytime I work as an electrical engineer, we're spitting out characteristics of a system, that kind of thing. You have to really think about if that makes sense, because just using a metric alone, whether it's for golf or whether it's for a real world purpose, can be misleading and it can cause a lot of errors. Obviously in engineering, those cause deaths. Here in golf DFS, it causes your guy to miss the cut. So obviously differences in the levels there, but still the same kind of idea. Our next value option is going to be Jim Herman at $6,200. And in terms of his metrics, they're not going to be pretty, but this is also somebody where we kind of got to put those numbers aside and really think about whether he's a good course fit. And somebody, I just want to start with this too, because a lot of people are probably rolling their eyes right now. This guy has 3 tour wins. Put some respect on his name. People like Sungjae Im have less wins than him. People like Tommy Fleetwood, Scotty Scheffler, Viktor Hovland, Tony Finau, all have less tour wins than Jim Herman. So before you guys go ahead and roll your eyes about this pick, keep that in mind. This guy has won before he's flashed that top end upside. And at $6,200, to have somebody that's a proven winner is a rarity. We hardly see it on tour. And while I wouldn't really be dishing out Jim Herman at many golf courses, his distance off the tee is a real problem at this point of his career, averaging just over 280 yards a drive. This is a perfect course for him. This course at just over 7,000 yards, he's not going to have to worry about hitting long irons into greens, which is really where you see a lot of his problems come up. And because we have this short track, I think he's not only going to be a little bit overlooked, but he has some top end upside. So if we take a look at his game, get a little bit into the advanced metrics here, he is not only short off the tee, he's extremely inaccurate. So that's really why you see him struggle at some of these longer tracks, because not only is he missing fairways, he's also only hitting at 280 yards. So he's getting penalized by the rough. He's also getting penalized by his lack of distance. But here at a resort style golf course where there's little to no rough to worry about, you're also dealing with some of the biggest fairways in the world. Both of those impacts are almost completely mitigated, which you'll like to see there. The fact of the matter, though, is Herman is a very solid approach player. He's going to rank in the top 50 on shots gained approach almost every single year. He's an extremely solid putter, averaging over half a stroke gained per round on the greens. And when he brings both of those skill sets to the table, particularly at one of these shorter tracks, he competes. He doesn't just make cuts. He ends up finishing in the top 10. So let's go over to the recent form side of things to talk a little bit about it. In terms of recent form, people are giving him a lot of shit, and they really shouldn't be. He's coming in making 7 of his last 9 cuts, which is extremely solid for somebody of his pedigree, particularly at this stage of his career, getting a little bit older. And while the Houston Open wasn't anything eye-popping, he did make the cut last week. That was a track that didn't fit him at all. It was an extremely long track with penal rough. And overall, for him to even make the cut at Memorial Park is a huge bonus, a huge feather in his cap. I mean, just did not expect him to go out and make a cut at all. And again, let's remember about Jim Herman. This guy has 3 tour wins. He won at the Wyndham Championship, won at the Barbasol, and won back in the day at the Houston Open back in like 2015, something like that. That's more wins, again, than Tony Finau, Viktor Hovland, Scotty Scheffler, Tommy Fleetwood, and Sungjae Im, which all of them are excellent players, top 20 players in the world. So I think we need to give a little bit more respect Jim Herman's way. The Pip Daddy, by the way. He's the self-complained Pip King, going out there trying to make money in socials. I'm 100% positive he didn't get any of that Pip money, but let him dream at the very least. I'll move on to Matthew NeSmith now at $6,800. Somebody who's popping in both metrics. So he's a top 20 course fit ranking, top 35 recent form ranking. Somebody who's a little bit of a sneaky course fit as well. So much like somebody like a Troy Merritt, somebody who's not very long off the tee, but also relatively inaccurate. So you don't like to see those things. But here at Sea Island, it's one of the few venues on the entire PGA Tour where you're going to be able to get away with that. And if there's a part of the game that he can really lean into, it's the approach play. As of right now, he's the 5th ranked golfer on all of the PGA Tour in terms of shots gained approach, ranking him among the elite of the elite players. DJ, JT, Viktor Hovland, Mito Pereira in terms of their approach play. he's ranking among those guys. That's how good he is with his irons. And while the putting isn't really what we're looking for, I mean, Matthew NeSmith, one of the worst putters in this field, he at least brings a very solid around the green play to the table. So for him to compete, it's really going to come down to the putting. He's at least going to have to make his fair share of putts. But when we take a look at the recent form, there is a lot to look forward to here. So he's been a little bit inconsistent. There's been some missed cuts, but there's also been some very solid finishes. Just like last week at the Houston Open, where he saw him squarely in contention. He was on Saturday. He was a few shots off of the lead. Unfortunately, completely faltered down the stretch. Actually ended up finishing in 46th place. That's how far down the board he ended up falling. But just like a Jim Herman, this course is way more suited for his game. That course over there in Memorial Park had penal rough. It was extremely long. So for both of those guys, Jim Herman and Matt NeSmith to make the cut, that is, again, a huge feather in their cap. So coming in with a clearly better version of himself than what we've seen over the past year, somebody who's had a lot of good vibes at some of these short golf courses in the past as well. Just a few that come to mind. He almost won the RBC Heritage. He's competed at the Corrales Punta Cana Championship, the Bermuda Championship. Again, all golf courses that are relatively short have Bermuda grass greens, and sometimes you get wind as well. So with the comp courses, with the recent form, somebody I'll definitely have in a good amount of my lineups. And lastly, guys, we have Matt Jones at $6,900, and a lot of this comes down to the weather. At this point on a Wednesday, it looks like it's going to be extremely blustery throughout the weekend. So at $6,900, the guy that is the best wind player in the world is going to be in my player pool. So just to take a look at how good he is in the wind, and I got to see this in person. I got to see this round almost every single shot. I saw about 12 of the holes at the Honda Classic this year on Thursday, where he went out and shot 8 under par. The next best scorer on the golf course was 3 under par. He was 5 shots better than the rest of the field, completely lapped them out there. And he did it in a very unique way. Usually people, when they think about good wind players, they're either extremely cognitive, they're really good at factoring in the impact of wind, almost like reading a putt, right? They're able to read the break through the air, that kind of thing. Or they're really good at flighting the ball down low, and he's the second there. This is the fastest player in the PGA Tour. This is somebody who essentially walks up to his golf shot, gives it about a second of thought, and then hits. Sometimes he gives no thought. Sometimes he walks up to it and literally starts his backswing by the time his feet are getting set. And I think that's actually very advantageous, right? When you're dealing with the wind, it's very easy to psych yourself out. And for Matt Jones, it's very simple. He aims at the pin, he flights the ball down low, and he just hits it. Whether he has a tailwind, whether he has a wind behind him, side to side, by flighting it down low, it takes almost all of that out of play. I got to see it in person. It was absolutely beautiful. You would have thought somebody who shot 8 under par, again, would have been grinding over his shots, would have been trying to be a perfectionist, and that was far from the case with Matt Jones. So again, looking at the little bit of the weather radar, we do see quite a bit of wind for this weekend, so I'm going to do a little bit of preparing there. I'm going to be playing Matt Jones in this type of instance. And if we take a look at his game in general, he's somebody who's very solid on approach. He's going to be well above average in terms of hitting greens in regulation, everything like that. If there's anything that really holds him back, it can be the putter at times, right? It's just above average in terms of PGA Tour putting. He has some really bad weeks, though. That's really what makes it look worse than it is. But he also mixes in some pop weeks at the putter, where he goes out, he gains 4 or 5 strokes putting. Obviously, he was able to do so at the Honda Classic this year. And I think it really comes down to that. He's going to bring it from tee to green. If he can bring it on the greens, I think he sees himself in contention. Let's take a look at the recent form real quick here, though. It's not going to blow you away or anything like that. He's at least made 4 of his last 5 cuts, which I guess is nice. But since his win at the Honda, his best finish is an 18th at the Zozo. So it's kind of fallen off, hasn't quite had his foot down to the gas pedal like he should. But now that he's had all of those middling performances in a row, he's going to come out here and have to show some type of fire at some point. You can't just rest on your laurels, have that win from last year and hope that's going to make you into the playoffs for next year. He's somebody who, in those super high, star-studded fields, I'm not necessarily sure he has a good chance to win. So now that he has a short track here, something that he should be able to take advantage of, I do think that he's not only going to be aggressive, but also going to be highly motivated this week to go out and get a good finish, particularly before a lot of those star-studded events come around where he might not really be in play. So don't sleep on his game this week. He is clearly underpriced for this field. And if it really gets dicey in terms of the wind, he's somebody who's going to be in contention. That is all I've got for this week's value plays. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you guys have as your favorite play, priced $7,500 and below. Obviously for me, if it gets super windy, it is going to be Matt Jones. If we weren't dealing with weather, just talking about pure course fit, recent form, that kind of thing, For me, it'd be Matthew NeSmith. So go ahead and let me know down in the comments. I always love to hear from you guys. Always love to get some debate going as well. And we're going to have our fades and sleepers coming out a little bit later on today. So make sure you guys keep an eye out for that. And we're going to have our weekly DFS live stream this evening. That is going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We'll talk weather, we'll talk player pool, we'll talk ownership numbers. If you guys have any questions, we'll be going over them in the chat as well. Overall, just making our lineups, getting prepared for tomorrow, going over any last second news. So link will be in the description for that. Go ahead and set a reminder so you guys don't miss that. If you guys haven't already liked and subscribed to the channel, make sure you guys go ahead and do that and like the video. Really helps me out with growing the channel. We're almost at 400 subscribers, which is going to be a really cool milestone to hit. The goal obviously is to get to 1,000 sometime soon. That's when YouTube starts to give you more permissions. You're able to do a lot more customization on your videos. Also when you can start to monetize your videos. So a lot going on there. That's really what we're working towards here on the channel. Appreciate all of your support again, and see you guys later on tonight for the live stream.